Hello everyone, welcome to this session on web channel. So topic of discussion today is transforming the customer journey through your web strategy. So today we'll talk about web and how it has gained prominence in the world today, especially after the pandemic. So it's a central channel for most of the marketing activities, whether it's a HCP portal, medical education portal, MedInfo, webinars, and also gathering leads for other channels such as marketing automation, your content management. So we'll discuss two aspects of web channels today. So one is how marketers are using it to realize their commercial strategy, and other is the operational part. The scale and the infrastructure that is required for their web presence, especially large pharma companies. They have presence across the world, thousands of websites in multiple languages. So to manage that in an efficient way, it requires a very well thought of strategy. So we have a panel of industry leaders today to discuss on this topic. So let me introduce my panel members. They are the ones who are leading these kind of strategies for their organizations. So we'll learn a lot from them today. So my first panel member is Paolo Vitali, and he's the head of Global Omnichannel Customer Engagement at CSL V4. Next, we have Michael Kerr, and he's the Global Head of GTM Services at Boehringer Ingelheim. And then we have Dana Smith, and she is Director US Marketing at Calliditas. Welcome to all of you. Dana, I'll go with you first. This question is about the first aspect I spoke about the commercial strategy and the web vision. So these are tied together. So how companies are taking or approaching this to realize their vision with the web channel?
Yeah, as you had mentioned, especially during the pandemic, web really has emerged as one of the primary engagement channels that we utilize. So as a marketer, I think of it as the central hub of all of our digital strategy and digital activities, as many of our tactics depend on web as a component to complete the communication loop with the customer. Just think, as you had mentioned, we're driving our customers to learn more, and then they end up on our website to close the loop there, or we are asking them to sign up for more information, and our web channel is used to gather that information. The website really does become part of those tactics as well, and we have to think through at the time of development of gathering information on those tactics, how our web strategy will have that payoff. So we have to always think about the web as a component. It's also very important when we're thinking about our websites about web evolution, and as our brand grows and moves through the brand life cycle, it's always crucial to always plan ahead and evolve our website through the different stages of our brand. It's not only for compliance reasons, but also because it's our central communication platform. It's also usually the first place someone will go to look for the latest information. So we always have to stay up to date. Therefore, it's always important to plan ahead during your website evolution and ensuring consistency with what's going on with other channels and really pull through our key brand message.
Thank you, Dana. And Michael, it's not just the web, right? It's an integrated channel with other platforms, your backend applications, other channels. So you want to add to that? On what's your view on this?
Yes, thank you, Ravi. I would like to add what Dana just said. While I completely agree, from a big pharma perspective, what we actually started doing was we start to manage web as a global centralized product. Yeah, we call this our global web solution, which is evolving along release cycles so that we can keep up with these ever-changing demands and requests for new functionalities. And what we are also actually following Agile Scrum methodology to manage our web solution at scale. And interestingly enough, what we can observe since we established such a centralized management model is that there actually is an ever-growing demand, not only for more, but also for more sophisticated functionalities. And this clearly tells us that the web channel is becoming an ever more important channel for engaging with our key audiences. So traditionally, I think we all know that web was certainly not the preferred channel for HCPs. They simply didn't trust pharma websites, yeah. But we see that we are increasing our capabilities there, and while we are adding more relevant functionality, engagement started to move beyond the pure delivery of product information, which was really at the heart of the web channel strategy mostly. And we were able also to see this in terms of the duration of website visits. When you made product information easily available, HCPs come and go within not even a minute because they have found what they wanted to see. Yeah. But now we are at a point where we even dare to think about more community enabling topics that we probably can facilitate through our global web solution.
Sure. Thank you, Michael. So, Paulo, the next question is for you. So, this strategy implementation is not very easy, right? Given the scale, and it requires a concerted effort from multiple teams. So, what are the challenges that life sciences organizations face when they implement the web channel strategy?
Yeah, thank you for that. To me, there are maybe three core elements, three main elements. The first maybe is really to stay relevant to the brand strategy. And I was very much interested in what Dana you were saying just before. As a marketeer, to me, it remains one of the maybe biggest challenge to make sure that the creativity and the beauty of the web and everything, the functionalities you, Mike, was referring to, was alluding to, don't get the lead as the strategic imperatives, or at least this is what we're trying to do here at CSLV for the strategic imperatives and the behaviors that we want to trigger for that brand must remain at the very core of what we create and what we propose then through our sites. Because differently, if we lose that connection, then I trust that where you will possibly see also all your metrics not going in the right direction, and maybe customers coming once, but not necessarily returning very often, or spending the time you would wish on the different pages. Second element to me remains metrics, insights, and targets. So that remains very, very critical as our ability to basically define how well we have been delivering on the first pillar, remaining relevant to the strategy. It requires continuous measurement and optimization, and without having properly assessed which data are more beneficial in doing that or instrumental to that objective, this also proves quite challenging. And to me, the third element or pillar is maybe customer appreciation, as we can't move anyway away from that. And to me, that really speaks to how we measure appreciation, which is easy to say, sometimes often challenging to put in practice. And of course, content, right? I think, Michael, you were also alluding to this. If content is king, and if it's not relevant, indeed, the site might be beautiful, but traffic is simply not going to be where you aim. And this is also very much bundled with maybe UX and the customer experience, so all the tools and all that we can work on to on top of content make usability and the experience on that channel as positive as possible.
Sure. Thanks, Paulo. And
Ravi,
others
if I
may
may add
add
to that very briefly what Paulo just said about relevance of content also in the web channel strategy. That's an interesting one. So what are the elements to make this more relevant? And from from our modular content experiences across email and e-detail mostly, we know that customization is a very important lever, to make content more relevant. We are not there yet, but I'm wondering already how we can make website content more custom, and the Amazons of the world, the booking.coms of the world are certainly far ahead of big pharma or pharma industry overall, but this I'm pretty sure will be the next big thing, and then topics will come in place in terms of how we profile the users, how we identify the users in the first place securely, how we know who they are, what the preferences are, and then that we dynamically can put together the web pages that then address their most pressing needs. That will be an interesting one. And then we need to have all the website tagging in place so that we are actually able to measure. So this will be an interesting journey. So at least in BI, we did not start in this channel yet. Email, we have started. In web, we are waiting to see how this might happen in the future.
All right. Yeah. And Dana, from the emerging biotech perspective, Michael spoke about the HCPs didn't trust their websites, right? But now that has become a primary channel for them to get information, to engage with MSLs, or to know more about the products. Then with the content, the personalization part of it, relevant experience for them so that they come back again and again. So you can add to that if you have experienced something similar in your journey.
Yeah, definitely. As Michael had mentioned before, we're doing that in email, but that is definitely something that we'd love to do, is personalize our content on our web. And I'm curious to see how we can get there without including a login, and include new technologies to allow for that. The login was something of years past, right? In order to identify those customers and personalize that journey, but we all know that we lose a lot of customers at that point. So it's definitely on the forefront and in top of mind on how we can better do that in this web channel. But yeah, we're just not there yet. And keeping up with content, as Paolo said, is always a challenge, and ensuring multiple iterations through the full MLR process and is always something that is a large burden.
So Michael, you have come a long way through in this journey, and now you are at the optimization stage, right? So now centralization is a key factor to that, and with large organizations with multiple brands, their presence across multiple markets, teams spread across the geography. So what challenges you face in this centralization of operations?
So that's an interesting question, Ravi. I've thought about this. I think countries were very much used to a pretty decentralized approach, where agencies were reading their lips and delivered whatever they wanted, and by doing so, continuously invented new demands by having fancy agency ideas, let's face it, that HCPs hardly appreciated. And I'm totally aware that this last statement might be a little provocative, but I think we all know about the level of acceptance of pharma websites on the HCP side, yes? And this is something we urgently need to start turning around. And web is just too important to let that go as an engagement channel. And as mentioned earlier, it is available always and almost everywhere at exactly the time the visitor wants it, So this has to become one of our key channels in my mind. But coming back to your question, the decentralized model really led to a web ecosystem of many hundreds of sites that were very hard and super costly to maintain, resulting probably in a zillion of local and proprietary solutions that were custom developed, and no one really had a full overview. On top, that approach created significant security risk also, and with this obviously also reputational risk for the entire organization. So this is something that really created a burning platform to change the approach. And looking today, countries need to understand and accept that the more centralized approach is more robust and more stable. And we all know and agree that the objective has to be to find the right balance between an approach that is obviously too rigid because too centralized, too much driven by corporate, versus one that is completely decentralized and literally not maintainable from a global perspective. Yeah, I think this balance is always key. Otherwise, you will also lose the acceptance of your markets. And while we are on this journey now for about 2 to 3 years, we started also to realize that we need to educate our colleagues across the organization, including marketing, obviously, what it means to manage a global product in an agile and a centralized way. And this approach impacts the way how the brands need to engage with the web product, how they plan their tactics, and what the product team, the web product team, actually can do for them and what they just can't do for them in this centralized approach. And to be successful with this, we need to be very clear about the advantages of this model without hiding the disadvantages. I think this is also key for acceptance. And only on the back of a common understanding, this is going to meet customer requirements internally, but also externally. And one last huge challenge before I come to a close, I would like to flag here as well. By introducing the global web solution, we also introduce our BI global design system with the objective to have a harmonized web presence across the globe with a clear and easy user experience that is optimized along the latest research. Such a design system obviously comes with rules and guidelines that also our external agency partners need to follow, yeah? And before they follow, they need to hear it, they need to understand it, they need to agree, they need to be trained. And only when all this is in place, we are able to create this user experience in line with the efficiency levels that we need to be economically viable, yeah? And we even have established a certification program to get this critical interface up and running. So you see, a lot of effort needs to move into this to really create a good web user experience at scale.
Sure. So
Maybe
Paulo,
if I can elaborate, and Michael, I couldn't agree more on some of the things you have said. Maybe one aspect is I would possibly decouple the decentralized and this approach and decentralization, if you will, in terms of backend and front end and contents. Meaning, I trust you're alluding to a lot of backend work where centralization is drastically simplifying things, managing the complexity we all used to have to manage a few years ago. It was just proved super complex, but on the contrary, the centralized model is now saving all of us tons of time and is making things possible that were simply not considerable back then. And on the contrary, the centralized model doesn't absolutely necessarily mean that, for example, all markets or all brands need to go with exactly the same functionalities or contents. That's for sure. So there's a lot of advantage of explaining, back to the point of also educating and sharing, creating buy-in from internal stakeholders. This is to me a critical element, because once the values and the positives of the approach are commonly understood, then there is still a lot of freedom to, of course, listen to customers and make it, once again, the contents for that specific site in that specific brand or market most relevant to the customers we serve. And so it's can really be a win-win. The centralization approach, centralized approach, is also not necessarily always very easy to manage, because of multiple elements like time zones and cultural things, asking our colleagues to deal often with someone who's sitting in another country with a different time zone in a different language is obviously very different than picking the phone and calling the guy down the road you have always been working with. But that's change management, right? So that is a burden that we share with any other transformational program. Is not web specific, at least in my experience. You would probably agree to that. But yeah, I think we really share some of the commonalities, common challenges you were alluding to. That was resonating very much with me.
Maybe to quickly build and react on what Paulo just said, that this line between the global management to make it efficient, effective, controllable versus the local nuances that you just cannot agree, is very critical. And we try to accommodate this by the global web solution that comes with the functionality that is readily available off the shelf for everybody, all markets across the globe, like this overnight, more or less. I'm exaggerating, not as quickly, but almost. And with a governance that is having discussions with single markets that might have specific needs, and we enable them on a website level, and we have a standardized interface between the global solution and the local web application, so that the markets have the freedom to still have their custom applications, while we don't corrupt the stability and the performance of our global centralized system. So this is the way how we try to balance that. But it comes with a layer of governance, again, that markets have to accept, kind of.
And I would bet, Michael, when you refer to those local, let's say, solutions, you would agree, as long as they stay on the same ecosystem, right?
Yes, exactly. The interface needs to be clear, the technical one, yes.
Absolutely.
Great, thank you. So there is centralized approach, and then there are local markets, and they have their own marketing agencies, AORs. So in all of this ecosystem, so partners and the agencies, what role they play, how important they are in this journey. It's this question for all of you, but Dana, probably from your
Yeah.
perspective, if you can share your view.
Yeah, so I'm the marketer on the call, and I like to think mostly about the front end and what our customers are seeing at the end of the day, right? And that my focus is on the brand strategy and ensuring pulling through that. Of course, I'm in the weeds with the technical details because we have to execute. However, I really lean heavy on my agencies and agency partners to bring me the latest and greatest thinking. They're the experts in UX, as we discussed, and design, and the technology solutions that really make the strategy work. So I do lean heavily on my agency partners to help me pull through and execute this strategy. At Calliditas, we're small, and we're compared to my colleagues on the phone here. So, my main focus really needs to stay on the brand strategy. And, I look at our partners as an extension of our team and always looking for our best interests in mind and bringing us the latest and greatest so that we can really have a collaborative effort to ensure that, we're providing the best output for our customers.
Michael,
maybe then if we can build on what you just said, I totally agree. I mean, creative agencies can absolutely be instrumental in elaborating great user experience, bring best practices. Basically, that's a different job versus what we do, most of us in pharma, right? It's just as simple as that. At the same time, I trust the work we do enabling all the marketing teams in here at CSLV4 really is also about understanding or briefing that creativity in the right direction. So to me, there's the best creativity if it's not meeting once again the brand imperatives and the preferences of the customer doesn't necessarily create a lot of impact. Indeed, for the industry we work in, what's really relevant to customers is also often the science, and even though it may not come right with the most fancy or top-notch design, as long as it is relevant and as long as we give ourselves a chance to learn what is of interest and where do we convert exactly to where we want. That is where then the work in partnership with the agencies can also be very, very effective. Differently, it's sometimes a bit more challenging, but yeah, we also aim for having nice services and nice products to showcase. So there's good opportunities, let's say, to collaborate very effectively there.
Yeah.
And I love this topic with how to best collaborate with the agencies. Yeah, this is keeping me very busy over the course of the last 2.5 years. And I didn't meant to be in any way or form negative about creative agency partners. Yeah, that might probably have come through a little bit. That's not the case. What we realized is that we need to have different agencies for different purposes. Yeah, and this is very important. And for the bread and butter business on web, we have just decided to go for this fully centralized model. So we are teaming up with agencies that know how to run such a digital factory at truly global scale to reduce costs, yeah, without compromising on the quality. Of course, these agencies are typically not those that can bring you the latest, greatest in web experience that we cannot afford to miss. Yeah. So the way we started now to balance this is that we actually have created two operating models in one kind of. One we call scale, very simple. The other one we call special, where we have also diversified our agency portfolio. But where also the link is clear between the special and the scale model. So whenever in the special is something happening, that is then mastered, understood, and so on. And it's becoming more and more a commodity that we move this then into the scale model and hand it off to our digital factory. And this again is a little bit like the balance between global and markets, the creative agencies versus the digital factory agencies. So these are interesting tension lines to manage and to walk along.
And I trust, Michael, if I may, you've also introduced something very interesting. We often compare this to the Lego bricks in here to explain the concept. So as we do something similar, also in terms of defining and creating those models, those nice Lego bricks that becomes the functionalities that are available at scale and at speed at low costs as they have been developed and the code is proprietary at that stage. So that is all available almost overnight for everyone, and then the creativity can still come and more functionalities can be so maybe that's what you refer to as the specialty part, and that is often very, very welcome. And this is also where maybe global plays a role in supporting. Not all markets have always the resources to maybe work at that dimension, but as long as it gets let's say produced and incorporated in the library we have, then it becomes available for all. So I think maybe with some different nuances, but that dualism do exist in here as well.
That's exactly
interesting.
Right.
So Paulo, you spoke about the library, and then earlier you spoke about the change management. So there is a library, but to roll it out to different countries, you need a proper change management. So how tools like content management system or digital asset management system, so how these tools help implement it in an efficient way?
So thanks, Riley, for the question. To me, that proved extremely useful to nail down the complexity into something manageable and into something that we could then bring at scale. When we started in the journey, we are still quite young in the journey. You've probably heard from our GM in the introduction yesterday, talking about where the company is. Tons of great work has been done, but we acknowledge we are still very much into the maybe early stages of bringing solutions fully at scale. And for example, creating a common CMS and having all countries and all brands really coming into a one only CMS, one only hosting, and unifying elements like domain structure or the kind of analytics and the tagging strategy and the multiple other aspects from cookie management to authentication tools and other rules or other components. Those are a bit more standard over each and every page because indeed, yes, there is the creativity, but you also have that a little bit more boring, but indeed very, very useful terms and condition page. So all the elements which we could really simplify and harmonize. We have been trying to do, and we've been doing quite extensively, and this has been taken off the shoulders of my marketeers colleagues the burden of having to take care of all those nitty-gritty details, and that is all taken care of in a compliant way. We can also make our compliance and legal teams much more happier, as they don't have to deal with all that unnecessary complexity. And then of course this is also something that needs to evolve. So technology is changing at a speed which is amazing, and sometimes we struggle a little bit to cope with that level of innovation. Not necessarily something where we feel we need to stay at the very front end of innovation. Indeed, once again, this is pharma, so as maybe we have other priorities to be remaining, for example, relevant to customers, or enabling our colleagues in the different markets to implement speedily the needs, the changes that they need are maybe priority needs versus necessarily reflecting the latest and greatest technology. But surely creating those commonalities and bringing everything under the same CMS, under the same hosting, and centralizing those kind of those elements, those functionalities proved foundational for then bringing the solution to scale.
Great. Yeah. Thanks, Paulo. Michael, your view on CMS, how it has helped realize your web presence?
That's an interesting topic. We are now at a stage that obviously Paolo and his organization are a little ahead of the curve already. Based on some experience, we were super careful to open up the web space for, let me call this uncontrolled access and publishing. Yeah, but we are starting to open up the CMS also for our product owners in the markets and give them the full authority to quickly change content, to manage the whole approval on themselves. But then, of course, they have the full accountability of what is published online. Yeah. But this is a little bit the balance where we now are leaning more towards giving full autonomy into the markets, so that they have a much quicker turnaround time when there's something happening in the market that they want to publish immediately within few hours and not 2 or 3 days or so, which is kind of typical turnaround times when you have your factory in offshore India and sitting probably on the other end of the world. We talked about time zone challenges already. But yes, the CMS is helping on this journey a lot to make this in a controlled way. Yeah.
Sure.
And maybe just a quick comment on that, right? Size here matters also a lot, right? Michael, you belong to a huge organization compared to the one we manage, and if you have one person or a couple of people in a given country that would contribute or would require access and so on, it's something that you can manage in a certain way. And then, of course, as you move into much larger organization, I also previously worked for much larger organizations where, of course, the level of complexity that you need to manage is completely different. Anna was herself referring earlier, right, to the differences in being maybe a smaller, just younger organization with the beauty and the difficulties that come together, right?
Again,
probably right. Yes.
Yeah, great. And that brings me to Dana. So what's your experience in new launch, new product launch? So you have started your US operations, but from that perspective, first time launches, your view on use of technology or your experience for these new launches on the web channel.
Yeah, no. So naturally, smaller organization, plus the fact that we are a launch brand, naturally a brand goes through an evolution. So you have to always keep thinking ahead about, the evolution of your brand and how the web evolves along with your brand messaging. There's a lot of iterations that need to happen usually within the first year or two to ensure alignment with our brand strategy and what we're allowed to say when we're allowed to say it. So staying, keeping web on the forefront and ensuring that that matches with everything else that we're pushing out there is very critical to keep up to date and really close that loop with the customer. So just from a launch perspective, obviously, web is a main channel that has to go through many evolutions within a short period of time, and you always have to stay up to date.
Sure.
And if I can quickly build upon, I think Daniel, you just touched upon a super important aspect, right? That is maybe the challenge of indeed making the engagement seamless across the different channels. You alluded to the relevance of making sure that what stays on site is also consistent to the other channels being used and how the message is coming across regardless the channel. I think that is at the moment here with us is maybe one of the key focus we have to ensure that right, regardless the role that is because if we really put the customer at the center, regardless where the message is coming from, regardless of the time or the channel or the day, or if it's marketing, if it's market access, if it's medical, or if it's someone else in the organization. The difficulty sometimes is really to ensure that the communication is seamless, that there is more of a dialogue rather than a push communication. So our ability to indeed learn and listen, collect information from also the customers and not just to the customer, it's super key, and that ideally we build upon. So in a call we may want to bring the messages in a certain way, and then it's nice to know that on the website you have the contents maybe elaborated in a different way, and that gives an opportunity to right, build upon and maybe through an email create the link to more contents or more opportunities. It could be register for registering for a webinar, it could be downloading a paper, it could be whatever other tactic that you can think of. And this is the beauty of what we call the customer engagement planning, that is really trying to create journeys where all of this comes together in a seamless way. And this is easy to say, but somewhat complex to bring to life. But that's the beauty of the game.
I think Paolo has beautifully described the journey we are probably all on from a multi-channel approach, where we are planning our customer engagements channel by channel, into turning this completely around, looking from the customer journey, and creating a true and real omni-channel experience. I'm certainly not the best expert to comment on this, but from a delivery standpoint, this comes with huge challenges, because we come from a channel by channel world with all the more or less siloed infrastructure data worlds that don't speak to each other. And when we flip this around now and really put the customer into the center, we need to rethink how we are doing this, and that will be also the next big thing.
Yep.
All right.
Not to speak of the challenge of making sure that also everybody who needs to be informed gets the right information and exchange the right information, right? Because as you bring that approach to life, we all know that there's different silos within the organization, sometimes office-based, sometimes field-based, sometimes headquarter-based, sometimes in a different country or region or whatever. And that add a third layer of complexity where, there's work to be done.
All right. Okay, so this session will not be complete if I don't ask you a question about the emerging technologies, so like metaverse or Web 3.0, blockchain. So are you experimenting with it, or do you see a use case yet for these technologies?
I can briefly comment on that. On our side, to be honest, I think we want to be doing less things very good rather than a multitude of or plenty of things maybe not so good. At the same time, we are naturally super excited about innovation and piloting as needed. Typically, the need for experimenting with new technologies or different services comes as a huge ask from the markets directly. I recently had to agree to change a plan because a given market has flagged that, sorry, what you're bringing, not necessarily what our customers need. On the contrary, can we please activate these other technology because that would be make an impact here. So it's always great to have that kind of partnership and active listening to what is indeed relevant to customers in a different. And at the same time, you don't know what you don't know. That's what we say in the house here. So as long as there is something which we think might be of interest, we like to keep some pockets of innovation and pilot such. And the important thing is that if we fail fast, and that we scale the learnings as broadly as possible. And yeah, that's a little bit of the approach we're taking. But the main focus would really be about doing the few things that we know work well, or we learned that can work well and create impact, and do those in a consistent and serious and impactful way.
Understood.
And Paolo alluded to the size of the company I'm working for already. Yeah, so we are big pharma. We probably have a little bit of more bandwidth to play around with multiple things. So talking about metaverse, yes, we actually started to try to understand what this might mean in the pharma industry. This is very early days. Some of us might have listened to Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook, who sees the metaverse as the next big thing. And if you are not yet aware, there's a YouTube video available, 1.5 hours or so. That's definitely worth watching. This guy, yeah, walking through the metaverse. It gives you a good idea, but it's not here yet available for the industry. Yeah, but we decided now to start experimenting and to see what might be usable, viable use cases that are worth exploring further. And let's see how this goes. I personally, I'm pretty convinced that this will be a big thing at some point in time, specifically when you add this virtual experience with the devices that make this experience a more physical one, yeah, and then you connect really the virtual environment with the reality, despite you sitting in a chair in front of your screen, watching through the goggles. I don't know what this stuff is called, but this will be very, very exciting. But for the moment, it's all very fuzzy, and we need to start map out our journeys into this metaverse.
Sure. All right, we
Well,
have
well
just
one
two.
thing is for sure that our customers, right, the doctors we serve, and indeed the patients, are also right. The new generations are coming in every year, so in their life, these customers will be experimenting and will get used to such technologies increasingly. So as an industry, I bet at some point, if we want to remain relevant to them, we will need to be on top of those technologies as well. But good to know that right, there's a space for pioneering, and there's space for laggards to learn from the experimentations and the learnings, and then deploy at scale. So.
But I think the good news here is the digital natives will not only become HCPs, they will also join pharma and help us to move into that direction.
Agreed. Yes. So we have just a minute left, and there are lots of audience questions. I'll take one. So it's again about striking the balance. So it says, how do you address the complexities of building a communication plan to drive traffic to your medical focused websites without being promotional. So how do you balance between the two? You want to show the information, but at the same time, you don't want to appear as being promotional. Dana, you want to take a shot?
Yeah. So sometimes there's a place and time for certain messages, and it all depends on your strategy and what kind of information you're trying to communicate. So it's a little bit of a hard question, but there's definitely certain tactics out there that you can relay messages, certain educational platforms and web channels that would be less promotional in nature, and then there's obviously some owned web channels that are more medically relevant, etc. I guess it all depends on your brand strategy and what you're trying to do in order to decide when not to be super promotional or not. But the best promotion is those that you don't even realize you're being promoted to. So yeah, I guess there's some craftiness in how you position things.
Sure. Got it.
And maybe there's an element of transparency, right? I don't necessarily see anything wrong with being promotional as long as the product is relevant for whomever is being addressed in that piece of communication. And if that helps bringing the right medicine to the right patient, off we go. Super good to be promotional, right? On the contrary, if you know you're targeting an audience that is interested in science and you're trying to necessarily sell a product, maybe that's not going to land anywhere or be perceived super well. But to me, there's also a little bit of maybe sometimes a misconception of this being promotional, like being devil in the industry, where indeed I see a lot of positiveness, this industry being there to indeed support patients and people who are on the need for treatments that, thanks God, the industry bring to them and hopefully making a difference in their lives. So transparency and then we're probably
Certainly,
good as
if
the
you're
customer.
transparent, you don't need to be promotional. So, unfortunately, we have run out of time. It was very insightful. Thank you all. We need to wrap up now. We just ran over the time. Thank you. Thank you
Thank you
very
for
much.
having us.
Thank you, Ravi. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.